Hey, what's up, everyone? Super quick video today just to highlight these Diamond Comics previews catalogs. Now, Diamond Comics is a major comic distributor to local retail shops. Um, for years, they were the only game in town, although that's changed the last couple of years. But chances are, if you were buying EU comics back in the day, you were buying them from a retailer who was buying them through Diamond, who were using these catalogs to get a sense of, what product was going to be on the market the next couple of months. You probably saw these things sitting on the counter, right? That's what they use to sort of flip through to get a sense of what you presumably wanted to buy, which is why they bought them. What's really neat about this from the perspective of the expanded universe, and I've highlighted this in other ways in previous videos, is that every month they'd highlight some upcoming comics, which many times meant highlighting Star Wars EU comics. And they put these beautiful covers right on their cover in a slightly larger than comic size dimension. So these things really pop. Beyond this, and this is the thing I've talked about in previous videos, is that every one of these became collector's items. They started promoting these things with promotional posters for each issue that you would sometimes probably see on your local retail comic sellers' windows or walls. So I've got many of those posters that relate directly to these catalogs themselves. So all of these covers have corresponding posters that I've shown in a previous video, and I'll show off more in the future. Now, the stack here is not exhaustive. I'll share the full list at the end of this video. Just wanted to highlight the ones that I've got here. In no particular order then, beginning with November 1996, we've got this beautiful Dave Dorman cover art for the Dark Horse original trilogy adaptation. One quick collector's note is that these catalogs are double-sided. So when you sometimes see them sold on eBay or other secondary markets, someone might just be highlighting this. Well, that makes it really difficult to know what is what. So I will eventually add a description in the video highlighting not just all of the ones you need to collect, but what month and year in particular they are, so that you don't need to sort of like wonder, what's on the back side of all of these. I've noticed that with these in particular, sellers often refuse to take photos of both sides. I just don't know why. Obviously here, Boba Fett, Enemy of the Empire, another great cover. And speaking of Boba Fett, a really fun thing that they decided to highlight one month was the Bounty Hunters pop-up war. Really cool. Here for August 2006, Dark Times. Gotta love it. Now, this is obviously Clark Kent, but one reason why this matters from the perspective of you collectors is there's a sub-feature on the cover here with that familiar branding I've highlighted numerous times across the channel, Star Wars Taking the Galaxy by Force. It's a whole section inside on specific Star Wars merchandise available at the time. Coincidentally, I've got the Dark Horse Star Wars Taking the Galaxy by Force promotional t-shirt there that I've highlighted in a previous video. So this makes this, I think, worthwhile, even though it's just Clark Kent. You still get a little bit of a Star Wars corner there. Some later EU runs here, November 2012, highlighting the upcoming Brian Wood run. Beautiful covers. And the Star Wars, the Dark Horse adaptation, quasi-adaptation of what they, claimed was, the original rough draft of the George Lucas screenplay. Now, they weren't all just catalogs like that. Sometimes there were these consumer order forms. And like this here, highlighting the Jedi versus Sith, what is so important about this from February 2001 is that some people disagree about when Bane's first appearance is in the expanding universe, right? Like, when is he first mentioned? When is he first shown? When is he first actually sort of, like acting in the story rather than just being sort of discussed? In the context of comics, this becomes controversial because there are lots of earlier sources like the Lucas books, book Secrets of the Sith, that gets into who he is and what he looks like. But in context of comics, many people think the Jedi versus Sith is really sort of the first place to go. What that means, though, is if that's true, then this previews consumer order form here is technically his first comics appearance, because this is the promotional order form that appears before the publication of the comic. This makes this an extremely sought-after collectible by many comics fans. Forget EU fans, many comics fans recognize the value in that first appearance of Bane in comics and consider this to be the true first comic appearance. Finally here, this stack, this is something that's very important to me. In addition to those thick catalogs and the previews consumer order forms, they had some specialty catalogs. This one from 2014, sort of specifically highlighting graphic novels and trade paperbacks. Why this matters is that this is the catalog basically highlighting the end of the expanding universe. When Dark Horse lost that license folks might remember who were around at the time, they did this massive sort of sell-off, right? Like everything was discounted. It was just what an amazing time. If you hadn't gotten anything up to that point, you could buy the entire run of the Dark Horse EU for next to nothing. And this basically highlights that. So it's sort of sad. It's kind of the end of the era, from the dawn of the Jedi to the Dark Times and beyond. We felt a legacy. Stock up on all your favorite Star Wars collections. I remember being at the local retailer, and he knew how absolutely crestfallen I was about what had happened earlier that year to Star Wars, and basically gave me this as a memento. So it's very bittersweet to see this. It's wonderful to see Star Wars once again highlighted in one of these previews catalogs. But of course, the reason for being highlighted, of course, was very, very sad. So the additional ones not mentioned here is one from March 1999, specifically highlighting the Episode 1 Dark Horse adaptation. One from November 1999, highlighting the Chewbacca comic miniseries. One from February 2005, highlighting the Revenge of the Sith Dark Horse adaptation. There's one from November 2008 that sort of falls into this. It's not really EU as much, but what they chose to highlight was all of the really cool Star Wars action figures coming out at the time on the cover. August 2010 highlights the Knight Errant comic. And February 2002 highlights the Attack of the Clones Dark Horse adaptation. The final one that I'm aware of is in July 2000, highlighting the Darth Maul comic miniseries. There might be more out there. If there's any I've forgotten, let me know.